You know that sinking feeling when you see a bright, orange paper flapping on your windshield? Yeah, that was me, standing in my own driveway, coffee in hand, staring at a violation notice from my HOA. Bold red letters screamed at me. Vehicle not in compliance will be towed. It was about my truck, my pride and joy. A 1985 Chevy K10, lifted, loud, and absolutely beautiful. To me, it was more than a truck. It was a piece of my late father's legacy. We built it together. Every dent, every scratch had a story. But to the HOA, it was an eyesore. The note demanded that I move it into a garage or face a $250 fine per day. Problem was, I didn't have a garage big enough to fit it. And honestly, I wasn't about to hide it just because a few people didn't like how it looked. So, I did what any reasonable homeowner would do. I called the HOA president. Her name was Karen. I wish I were joking. She answered in that clipped, self-righteous tone. Sir, your truck violates community aesthetic standards. I tried to reason with her. Told her it was registered, operational, and not bothering anyone. But she just doubled down, quoting section numbers and bylaws like she was the Supreme Court. By the end of the call, I realized something. This wasn't about rules. It was about control. That night, I sat on my porch, staring at the truck under the moonlight. It gleamed like a defiant statement against their petty authority. My neighbor Dave wandered over. He'd had his share of HOA troubles. Too, something about his improperly colored mailbox. He laughed when I told him what happened. You should give them something really worth complaining about, he said, half joking. And that's when the wild idea hit me. If they hated my truck so much, what would they do if I replaced it with something 10 times worse? The thought stuck in my head all night. By morning, I was already making phone calls to a guy I knew from a military surplus auction. When I asked him, "Hey, you still got that decommissioned tank for sale?" He chuckled. "Sure do. You thinking of starting a war?" I grinned. "Not a war. Just making a point." And that's how it began. The next morning, the neighborhood woke up to something they'd never forget. At around 8 a.m., the rumble began, deep, metallic, and thunderous. Birds scattered from the trees. Garage doors opened. Curtains pulled back. Every set of eyes on my street turned toward the source of that sound. And there it was. A flatbed truck slowly rolling down the lane carrying a tank. Not a toy. Not a replica. A real steel, decommissioned M60 Patton tank, painted in faded olive green, complete with treads and a turret that looked like it could still fire a shell straight through. Karen's rulebook. The driver jumped out, shaking my hand with a grin. "You the guy who bought this beast?" I nodded. "That's me. Where do you want it?" he asked. I pointed to my front yard, the exact spot where my truck had been parked before the HOA's threat. As the tank rolled down the ramp, it crushed the edge of my driveway with a satisfying crunch. The ground trembled. My heart pounded. My neighbors stepped outside, phones in hand, recording every second. Dave, my buddy from next door, nearly doubled over laughing. "Oh man, Karen's gonna lose her mind." And she did. Not 5 minutes later, a white Lexus screeched to a stop in front of my house. Out stepped Karen herself, clutching her clipboard like it was a weapon. Her jaw literally dropped when she saw the tank. What is that?" she sputtered. I smiled innocently. "My new vehicle. You said the truck violated the bylaws, so I upgraded." She blinked, speechless for a second. Then, "You can't park a military tank on residential property." I shrugged. "Actually, it's demilitarized. No weapons, no ammo, fully legal. Registered too." I checked with the county. Karen's face turned redder than a stop sign. "This is unacceptable. The HOA will not tolerate this." "Then tow it," I said calmly, leaning against the massive tread. "Same as my truck." That was the moment I knew I'd won round one. By that evening, photos of the tank were already all over local Facebook groups. "Guy parks tank to fight HOA," one post read. The comments were pure chaos, half cheering me on, half calling me crazy. But for the first time in months, I felt in control. Of course, I had no idea just how far the HOA was about to take things next. By sunrise the next morning, my quiet neighborhood had turned into a full-blown circus. People were driving by just to snap pictures of the tank house. Few even stopped to shake my hand. One guy in a pickup yelled, "You're a legend, man," as he drove off. But not everyone was cheering. Karen and her HOA board had been busy. By mid-morning, I received a certified letter. Not a notice this time, a full-blown cease and desist order. It accused me of violating community standards, public safety, ordinances, and something called aesthetic uniformity. The letter claimed that if I didn't remove the tank within 72 hours, I'd face $500 daily fines, legal action, and potential removal by law enforcement. They really thought they could scare me. I walked outside, sipped my coffee, and stared at that magnificent hunk of metal glinting in the sun. It wasn't just a tank, it was a symbol. A monument to standing your ground against overreach and nonsense rules. Karen showed up later that day with 2 other HOA members in tow, each holding clipboards like they were storming Normandy. She pointed at the tank. "You are officially in violation of 12 separate bylaws. You will remove this vehicle immediately." I smiled. "Karen, you said my truck was non-compliant because it didn't fit your standards. You never said anything about armored vehicles." Her eyes widened. "This isn't a joke, sir. Neither was threatening to tow my dad's truck," I replied. They stormed off, muttering about lawyers. But that night, things escalated. I heard the hiss of spray paint. By the time I rushed outside, 2 teens were running off, laughing. Across the side of the tank, in big red letters, they'd written, "Move it or else." I cleaned it off the next morning, but it told me one thing. The HOA's drama was spilling into the neighborhood. Karen had probably riled people up behind closed doors. So I decided to push back officially. I called the local news, told them everything. By noon the next day, a reporter and camera crew were in my yard. I stood beside the tank as they filmed, explaining how the HOA had overstepped their bounds. That evening, the story aired on the 6 o'clock news. The headline read, "Local man fights HOA tyranny with a tank." It blew up online. Hundreds of thousands of views overnight. But fame comes with consequences, and Karen wasn't about to let me have the last laugh. The morning after my story hit the news, my phone nearly melted from notifications. Reporters wanted interviews. Veterans were sending me messages of support, and strangers across the country were calling me a hero for standing up to HOA tyranny. But right in the middle of all that applause came a certified envelope. Again, Karen wasn't backing down. The HOA had called an emergency meeting. According to the notice, I was required to attend to discuss disciplinary measures and legal consequences. I showed up that evening, walking into the community center with my head held high. The room was packed. Neighbors, board members, and a few curious onlookers who just wanted to see what would happen. Karen stood at the front, her face tight and serious. "Mr. Thompson," she began, "you have flagrantly disrespected the authority of this association. Your behavior has caused national embarrassment to this community." I waited a beat, then said, "No, Karen. You embarrassed this community when you decided to bully people over trucks, mailboxes, and lawn colors. I just parked something you couldn't ignore." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. A few people actually clapped. Her nostrils flared. "We have voted unanimously to impose the maximum fine, $500 a day until that tank is removed." I leaned forward. "That's fine, because I already contacted a lawyer and the county commissioner. Turns out, nothing in your bylaws forbids military memorabilia." The room went silent. I continued, "In fact, since it's demilitarized and registered as a private collectible, it's fully legal to display on private property." Karen's jaw dropped. One of the board members flipped through his paperwork, realizing I was right. The audience started whispering louder, a mix of disbelief and amusement. Then Dave, my next-door neighbor, stood up and said loudly, "Maybe instead of fighting him, the HOA should focus on fixing the potholes in our street." That got a cheer. Karen tried to regain control, banging her gavel, but the room had already turned. People were tired of her, tired of the nitpicking, tired of the drama. Within a week, 3 board members resigned, including Karen. I kept the tank right where it was, freshly cleaned and polished. The local kids started calling it the Freedom Machine. Veterans stopped by to take photos, and as for me, I parked my old Chevy truck right beside it. Months later, I finally sold the tank, but I kept one thing, the photo of it sitting proudly on my lawn, with the caption the internet gave it. "Don't mess with a man in his truck, because sometimes the best way to make a point is to make it unforgettable." If you enjoyed watching Karen lose her mind over a tank, make sure to hit that subscribe button, drop a like, and tell me in the comments, what would you have done if your HOA tried this?